Do you think a house can save your life? It's kind of a strange question, but it's one that comes to mind every time I sit down to work on this video, this 5,000 subscriber special, where for the first time I show a few pictures of what the Rancho looked like when I moved here in May of 2011. Not only was that a horrible time in my life personally, my kids had been cut off from me, my ex wanted nothing to do with me. It was the most heartbreaking time in my life. It was also the most heartbreaking time in the economy. The housing bubble had burst in 2008. Banks had collapsed. Debt was being written off. But I thought about things at that time, and I thought, if not now, when? To establish my own place to come to build my own dream here in California. Prior to that, I had done my level best to continue life as I knew it before, with family, friends, but just without success. There comes a point in every trans girl's life where you have to make radical changes and you have to move forward. I knew one day I would get my kids back. I would establish things right again with my ex, which I've done to this, as anybody will tell you, and I've talked about it often. It's something I'm proud about today, that my kids love me more than ever, and my ex cares about me more than ever. My transition is a success. When you look at the Rancho today, as I walk around with the camera, I sat here in tears the first couple times I watched the upload here, just in almost disbelief of how the Rancho has changed in a little under 4 years. When real estate agents would show people this property, inevitably they would pull up to the curb with the client, and the client would take a look out the window and see the property and ask, why in the hell are we stopping here? What's to see here? Well, this is a foreclosure house that's been on the market for the last 6 months. And the client would turn to them and say, are you out of your mind? Drive on. So my agent at that time conferred with the selling agent, sort of confirmed that nobody was really interested in the property, that a few people that had come and looked didn't even venture far enough back in the property to notice that there was a back lot that was included with the property, because as you'll see, there were 2 metal sheds, metal houses blocking it, and most people assumed that it was a 1/4 acre property. So, and who could blame them? As you'll see in the pictures that are coming up, the place was a wreck. It was known as the Hitchcock House. I remember driving down with the agent the first time, the foreclosure agent, and somebody called him on his cell phone at that moment when he was in the car, and he kind of lowered his voice and whispered into the phone, I'm showing the Hitchcock House. And the next words were, yeah, finally, I'll talk to you later. Well, it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that the Hitchcock House was relating to Alfred Hitchcock movies, and haunted and spooky houses and things like that. So for me at that time, with the real estate market having collapsed and this house worth selling for 1/3 of its peak value, and yet nobody even interested in people calling me crazy for even looking at housing at that particular time. I had the cash, I had the time, and I had the dream. And that's, in my mind, all that was required for me to find the right property, and this was it, warts and all. If you remember back in 2008, 2010, there was absolute chaos in the world, the financial world. It would have been impossible for me to arrange any kind of loan to buy a house like this, as much as I would have wanted to, for the investment leverage aspects, but I was lucky at that particular time that I had enough free cash to do it. So when I first arrived at the Rancho, you'll notice a large tree on the left-hand side, and you may notice a stump in the ground on the right-hand side, and an ugly tin awning covering the master bedroom window. This was what I called the tree of shame when I moved here, and it was the most disgusting feature because it was the tree that the crows would roost in at night and make an awful racket, and that's where the Hitchcock analogy came from. You can see the side of the house there where the bottle brush, it was terrifically overgrown there. There was no gates to the back of the property. The fences down the alley side were in a state of total disrepair. They were bulged in. It wasn't unusual as I would lay in bed at night to hear people running through the property to cut that corner to get down to their houses. Down the alley, they would cut across the back of the property because the fencing, as you see there, was in disrepair. You can also see, looking back today to the apartment house, how overgrown with weeds, trees. In total, 8 trees had to be dropped on the property. You can see the metal sheds that I was discussing earlier. They were used for prostitution and shooting drugs, and they were rented for $50 a month each. The garage is one of the few things that's never changed, but in the front of it you can see the tree, one of the trees that was dropped. A huge tree that made the whole property gloomy, almost to the point where the sun just never reached it. Everything was dank. Yes, that's a shed on the back of the house. There's a roof on the back, and there is the shine shack there with 2 of the trees that were removed. You can see the shine shack windows, the old school door and things. All that renovation awaited. And there's the most important feature of the house, and the one that we love most today, have converted into a deck. It actually looked, and people would joke and call it, a Mexican cantina. It was a corrugated tin roof structure with redwood beams, chicken wire that was an absolute mess. I remember when my ex got out of the car and walked around the corner and looked at that shed-like covering on that, she burst into tears and just walked away and said, "My God, you've made the biggest mistake of your life in buying this property." And I'll tell you, that cut like a knife. You can see the chicken wire and the darkness. The darkness was just a continuing theme of this property for the first year. Now we contrast it today with the before and after pictures, with the trees before the second one was cut down, and the way the property looks today. I'm most proud of the fences that I replaced. Yes, they may be chain link, but my neighbors now get to look at beautiful Lady Banks roses when they bloom in springtime, as you see here. And I'm proud that people come out and see something of beauty instead of something harsh like a chain link fence. What was overgrown in the back of the property and 4 more trees to be felled, 2 Studebakers buried, half in the ground, 28 cylinder heads, 8 blocks. So much stuff had to be hauled out of the property. But you can see today it's clear the well had to be rebuilt. I thought that was a dog house. It was a well housing, well pump housing. We actually put in an orchard now with peach, cherry, and plum trees and citrus trees in an attempt to beautify things. The sheds have been removed, opened up, planter boxes were poured, cement down the side, bottle brush were planted to give privacy. The covering on the back was removed of the property, and in a sweaty summer that pergola was built, and all of the surrounding retaining walls were framed and poured, and lights put in for nighttime to automatically come on and illuminate the steps. It was a long summer, that summer of 2011 going into fall and winter of 2012. You can see now how wonderfully it all turned out. And I remember when Jen first came to the Rancho and she walked out on the back deck for the first time, and she just said, wow. And now we spend so much time of our spring, summers, and falls out on a deck of beauty now, as opposed to the ugly thing it was back in 2011. A lot's changed for sure, and it certainly has been reflected too. Many people ask me, was it a good investment? I never look at a house as an investment, but it's been a great place to live, and it's been a wonderful place to invest a few dollars and make my dream come true. I remember growing up, my father would say to me, don't ever come to me and tell me you can't do something, because by nighttime tonight you will know how to do it. Whether rebuilding an engine, learning how to frame, learning how to do electrical work or plumbing, every time I needed help on a project, my father would say, don't tell me you don't know how to do it. By nighttime tonight, you will know how. That's why I dedicate this video to my father, because although we never had very much growing up, we always knew that we were loved and that my father cared for us. He put the time and commitment in teaching me how to hold the tool and how to do things. And for that, I am forever grateful. Thanks everybody for sharing this 5,000 subscriber special. What the Rancho looked like when I first moved here in May of 2011. Thanks so much.